Hello everybody and welcome back to The Lost Planeswalker. You are here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're doing the Mindskinner Commander deck. Let's dive right in and see how the commander works. Blue, legendary enchantment creature knight. The Mindskinner can't be blocked, and if a source you control would deal combat damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. This is a pretty unique commander because we're going to be negating damage to get mill, which is already a great strategy in blue, and we have a lot of cards that are going to help us buff up that mill effect. So first, we're going to look at cards that deal damage to mill. Next, we're going to looking at better ways to mill, buff up our board, or just additional benefit whenever we do something to mill your opponents. We're going to look at some great creatures that are going to help us deal damage in order to mill more. And then lastly, the good stuff here. So let's start right out by looking at damage for mill. And we have Ankh of Mishra, Giggling Skitterspike, and Stuffy Doll. Ankh of Mishra, 2 generic artifact. Each time a player puts a land into play, this deals 2 damage to that player. This is a great way we're going to get subtle milling every time they play a land, which is something they're probably going to do every turn. Giggling Skitterspike, 4 generic artifact creature toy with indestructible. When it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent, meaning we're going to mill 1 card every time it attacks, blocks, or becomes the target of a spell. Then you can pay 5 to make it monstrosity 5, putting 5+1/+1 counters, meaning anytime it would attack, block, or become the target of a spell, it's going to deal 6 damage, meaning you're going to mill for 6 cards each turn as well. And then we have Stuffy Doll, 5 generic artifact construct with indestructible. When it enters, choose a player, and whenever Stuffy Doll is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to itself. In this case, the Mindskinner is going to just direct all of that directly into mill, and hopefully we're going to mill out one of those opponents very quickly. Another main focus of this deck is big equipment, whether that's on our commander or on other creatures in this deck, just ways to buff up our stuff. So here's some really big equipment here with the Blackblade Reforged, Bone Hoarder, and Excalibur Sword of Eden. Blackblade Reforged, 2 generic legendary artifact equipment. It gets +1/+1 for each land you control. Equip it to a legendary creature for 3, or equip it to a regular creature for 7. Great way to buff up our commander, give it some additional toughness and some additional power in the process. Bone Hoarder, 4 generic artifact equipment with living weapon, meaning when we cast this, it's going to come in with a germ token, meaning we don't have to equip it right away. But equipped creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. This is probably going to be pretty big the longer the game goes on, so a great way to buff up our board. And then Excalibur Sword of Eden, 12 generic, which seems like a lot, but it's a legendary artifact equipment that says this spell costs X list cast, where X is the total value of historic permanents you control. Artifacts, legendaries, sagas are all historic. Equipped creature has +10/+0 and has vigilance, and equip it to a legendary creature only here for 2 generic. We certainly have a lot of stuff here that is legendary in this deck, but just being able to equip it to our commander, making it a 21, is a just very fun idea there, and if we can get through, that would be amazing. Some other equipment and ways to damage our opponents are Champion's Helm, Imperial Plate, Fire Shrieker, Helm of the Host, Inquisitor's Flail, Lightning Greaves, Masterwork of Ingenuity, Mind Crank, Strata Scythe, Swiftfoot Boots, and Winged Boots. Next, let's look at some additional ways we can mill out our opponents with some stuff that's going to help mill half your deck in one go. We have Fleet Swallower, Maddening Cacophony, and Teresian Mindbreaker. Fleet Swallower is 5 blue creature fish. When it attacks, target player puts the top half of his or her library rounded up into his or her graveyard. This is a 6/6 creature, so it's going to help mill on attack, which is very powerful. We don't actually have to deal damage, but if we do, we're going to mill an additional 6 cards to each opponent. Maddening Cacophony, 1 in a blue sorcery with kicker for 3 in a blue. Each opponent mills 8 cards. If this spell was kicked, instead, each opponent mills half their library rounded up. Definitely one of the cheapest ways to do this, but Teresian Mindbreaker, 7 generic artifact creature juggernaut. When it attacks, defending player mills half their library rounded up. And we can also unearth it for 1 blue, meaning it's going to be ready to attack and mill again. A great way to really lower those decks very quickly. Another great mill good stuff we have is Bravik the Grandiloquent, Mirelurk Queen, and Zelix Sanity Flayer. Bravik the Grandiloquent, obviously one of the best mill cards ever printed. 2 in a blue legendary creature human advisor. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill mill twice that many cards instead. Mirelurk Queen, 4 and a blue, creature, crab mutant with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, target player gets 2 rad counters, which is going to help mill cards. But whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, draw a card. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Mirelurk Queen. This ability triggers only once each turn. And Zelix Sanity Flayer, 2 and a blue, ledger creature horror with Hive Mind. Whenever a player mills 1 or more creature cards, you create a 1/1 black horror creature token. 1 in tap. Target player mills 3 cards. Now, if we're milling our opponents each turn, or if we have different effects that are going to help mill our opponents every turn, then we're going to make a lot of black horror creature tokens, which is very, very nice. But some other great mill cards here are Altar of Dementia, Court of Cunning, Dreamborn Muse, Fractured Sanity, Memory Erosion, Psychic Corrosion, Riddle Keeper, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Thought Collapse, and Wheat Wheel. Now, let's look at some other really cool cards that are going to help us either get through or deal a ton of damage. But before we do so, I would just like to say, please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me. Now, looking at some creatures that are going to help us deal some big damage, we have Auton Soldier, Silent Hall Creeper, and Tempest Djinn. Auton Soldier, 4 blue, artifact creature, alien soldier. When it enters copy as any creature on the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, and it's an artifact in addition to its other types. And this also has Myriad, meaning if we copy our commander with this and we attack, we're going to be creating 2 additional copies of our commander. If they stick around, our opponents are going to be milling so many cards. This is going to be so cool, and I think that there's a lot of other good hits here, like Silent Hall Creeper, 1 in a blue enchantment creature horror. It can't be blocked. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, draw a card, or this becomes a copy of another target creature you control. And then Tempest Djinn, blue creature Djinn with flying, and this gets +1/+0 for each basic island you control. Now, right now, I've built in the land base very simply. It's just basics. If you want to go through and change that, go ahead. But you're going to be playing a number of basics, so this is going to get pretty big and definitely swing in for some big damage. That's going to help mill a ton of cards. Some other great big creatures is Body of Knowledge, Canotech, Scarab Swarm, Chasm Skulker, Dreamtide Whale, Ilge the Shoreless Sea, Hunted Phantasm, Overlord of the Flood Pits, Phyrexian Metamorph, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, and Spark Double. And lastly, we have the good stuff. And some other cool cards I think could work very well in this deck are Charter Course, Fabricate, and Slip Out the Back. Charter Course, 1 in a blue sorcery, draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you attack this turn. We're definitely going to want to be attacking with a commander as many turns as possible, so we're going to be benefiting from that. Fabricate, 2 in a blue sorcery, search the library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. Lots of great equipment, lots of great artifacts. We're going to be able to get whatever we want right into our hand, and then Slip Out the Back, single blue instant, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it phases out. Whether we're going to save one of our best creatures or a commander, this is a great way to protect that. And the other good stuff cards in this deck are Etherize, An Offer You Can't Refuse, Arcane Denial, Brainstorm, Commander Sphere, Counterspell, Curse of the Swine, Mystic Remora, Propaganda, Rhystic Study, Sapphire Medallion, Soul Ring, and Wizard Class. Like I mentioned earlier, the land base is up to you. There's definitely a ton of great blue cards. They're going to help you get some spells back on top or do whatever you need, but I'm going to leave that up to you because I have just one in here, which is Nykthos, Shrine of Nyx. I think would be a great addition to this deck, and it's already $50. So if you don't have one of those, I'm not suggesting you spend $50 on a Nykthos, but maybe you do. That's all up to you. And with that, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This was a little interesting of a deck because you were focused around big creatures and other ways to mill. You're not going to be winning through combat damage with your commander out because you're going to be preventing that damage, but you are going to be trying to mill as many cards as possible. So I think this is a very fun deck. I think there's definitely some really fun play arounds you can do with this. Let me know in the comments down below. Are there any other great cards that just deal direct damage in blue? I'd love to know about it. In addition, if you would please leave a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe, that would mean the world to me. So thank you. And today's Scryfall card of the day is Glimmer Void. An empty canvas holds infinite possibilities. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.